Chapter 21:33. Obviously, she couldn't. Shen Manting wouldn't accept it. She couldn't accept it. Staring at Shen Luo and above her head, Shen Manting wanted to get angry, but she couldn't. It was as if there was another consciousness in her heart that was preventing her from getting angry with him. This feeling came suddenly and inexplicably, and Shen Manting felt suffocated. She stood up, but her head still hurt. Shen Luoan saw her look and stepped closer. He didn't show any emotion on his face and said softly, "I can't make it up." Shen Manting looked up at him with anger in her eyes. Unexpectedly, Shen Luoan took a step forward and stood in front of her. "But I still have to make it up," Shen Luoan looked at her and said. "I'm trying my best, whether I can make it up or not." Shen Manting looked at Shen Luo and in front of her and felt familiar yet strange. Was Shen Luoan like this? That's not it. Shen Luoan wasn't like this. Besides, Shen Luoan said again and stared deeply into Shen Manting's eyes with a pair of amber eyes. "I'm not just giving you material things." Shen Manting was forced to take a step back under his gaze. Shen Luoan took another step forward and said slowly, "I'm also giving you my heart." Shen Manting felt uncomfortable all over and took another step back. Unexpectedly, Shen Luoan reached out and held her hand. Shen Manting was shocked. Before she could react, Shen Luoan held her hand and pressed it to his heart. "Here, it's beating for you." It was obviously a normal body temperature. A normal warmth. Shen Manting felt inexplicably scorching. Shen Manting immediately withdrew her hand. She pretended to be frightened and shouted, "Shen Luoan, are you crazy?" His words made her so disgusted that she had goosebumps all over her body. How could such words come out of Shen Luoan's mouth? "Yes, I'm crazy," Shen Luoan said calmly. Shen Luoan replied calmly, "I almost went crazy when you got into that car accident 2 years ago." 2 years ago. Shen Manting was in a trance when she heard this. "I've always regretted it," Shen Luoan said as he held her hand. "If I had reflected on myself and not pushed you so hard, or if my temper had been a little better, would things have turned out differently?" Shen Manting shuddered and said, I've been waiting for you to wake up for the past 2 years," Shen Luoan interrupted her. "You were bedridden for 2 years. You were in a vegetative state for 2 years. Do you know that?" Shen Manting widened her eyes and looked at Shen Luoan in disbelief. She was in a vegetative state for 2 years? How could she possibly know? "I'm really afraid that you'll never wake up." Shen Luoan took another step forward and forced her into a corner. "Little Moon is still so young. He needs his mother." Shen Manting didn't know what to say. She stared blankly at Shen Luoan. There was a faint smell of tobacco on his body, but it wasn't unpleasant. "I told her that you're not, but she didn't believe me." Shen Luoan fell silent. Chapter 21:35. Shen Manting's eyes were fixed on Shen Luoan as she spoke. She felt wronged when she saw that he was getting quieter and quieter. She couldn't help but hold Shen Luoan tighter and burst into tears. "Why aren't you talking? Do you like Shen Manting more and don't want me anymore?" Shen Manting hugged him with all her strength and cried uncontrollably, Honey, I'm the one who likes you, not that person. Don't like her, okay?" Shen Luoan's heart ached when he heard her crying. Her uneasiness and fear were clear to him. Shen Luoan hesitated for a moment and hugged her tightly in his arms. He said softly, "Don't be silly. I love Manting and I always have. Don't cry or you won't look good." No. Shen Manting was very persistent. She hugged him and shouted, "You know it's not me. I'm not her and she's not me. I know. She hates you and you also know that she hates you. Why can't you only like me?" Her voice was intermittent with a sobbing tone. Every word was poking at Shen Luoan's heart. Yes, Shen Manting hated him. Even little Manting knew that. Why was he still so persistent? Perhaps it was because to him, whether it was the original Shen Manting or the 12-year-old He Yunsuan, they were the same person. Shen Manting cried even harder when she saw that Shen Luoan did not speak again. She looked up at the man in front of her, and her little face was already red from crying. She looked at the man in front of her and pulled out her hand to hold his face. Shen Manting directly kissed his lips and clumsily and hurriedly kissed him. Shen Luoan did not refuse, nor did he respond. He looked at her calmly, and his heart was a little complicated. Shen Manting burst into tears and said, "She hates it when I do this to you. She doesn't want me to do this." Then she put her hands around his neck and said, "But I like it so much. I like it when you kiss me. Can you kiss me again and hug me again?" Shen Luoan heard her words and pursed his lips. Shen Manting's body trembled and she sniffed and pretended to cry again. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Looking at him like a child, she said, "Hubby, why aren't you talking? Why aren't you answering me?" He reached out and gently wiped away the tears on her face. "To me, you are Shen Manting, and Shen Manting is you. I can't treat you as two different people. Manting, you're the mother of my child, and you're my wife," he said softly. "No," Shen Manting mumbled. "She's not your wife. I'm your wife. I love you. She doesn't love you. Don't be fooled." Shen Luoan's heart was pierced once again. Shen Manting sobbed. She grabbed his hand and said, "I was the one who put this ring on you. I'll put it on for you again at the wedding next month. As long as you don't want Shen Manting to come back, I can continue to stay by your side. Hubby, I beg you, please love me, okay?" Shen Luoan was taken aback. "What do you mean?" Chapter 21:36. His words were clear and organized. Shen Manting sobbed a little, but she remained calm. She stared into his eyes, as if waiting for his decision. Shen Luoan was still in a daze and found it hard to believe. In other words, it was a choice between two personalities. If he had chosen the original Manting, little Manting would have been obliterated. What if it was the other way around? If he chose young Manting, then the original Manting, would she never be able to come back? However, Shen Manting was still very serious when she said those words. He had always thought that little Manting was innocent and kind. But in the face of such a moment, she could still be so firm and decisive. That's right, in a moment of life and death like this, everyone wanted to survive. This is human nature. Shen Luoan stared at Shen Manting for a long time, then muttered, "Must it be like this?" Shen Manting saw his hesitation, and tears rolled down her cheeks again. She looked at Shen Luoan and said, "Hubby, do you like her more?" His voice was choked with sobs, filled with confusion and despair. She tugged at Shen Luoan's clothes and sniffed. "Why? Honey, why?" Little Manting was very puzzled. "I'm the one who loves you. I'm the one who likes you. You like me too. Why did you choose someone else?" Even the door couldn't block out the cries of despair. Yi Qianqian couldn't stand it anymore. She handed Little Moon over to Nanny He and quietly walked to the door of the room to observe what was going on inside. The door was ajar, but it just so happened that it covered the position of the bed. The voice came from the bed. Yi Qianqian stretched out her hand to knock on the door. At that moment, she clearly heard Shen Luoan's voice again. Shen Luoan's voice was a little soft, perhaps because he was quite a distance away from her. He said, "I didn't make a choice. To me, Manting is Manting. Manting, be a good girl and don't cry." "No." Shen Manting screamed in a hoarse voice. "I'm not. Hubby, you know I'm not." Shen Luoan fell silent. Shen Manting's sobbing filled the room. She couldn't stand it any longer. She turned around and picked up her phone to call Shen Jilia. Shen Jilia seemed to be busy. No one picked up the phone. After thinking for a moment, he knocked on the door and said, "Big brother, big sister-in-law." Shen Manting's crying subsided a little. "Come in," Shen Luoan said. When Yi Qianqian heard that, her hair stood on end. She had been married to Shen Jilia for 2 years, and this was her first time entering Shen Luoan's room. As soon as he walked in, he discovered that Shen Luoan's room was very large. When she walked in, she saw Shen Luoan sitting on the bed and Shen Manting lying on it. Shen Manting's eyes were red and swollen, and she looked very pitiful. Yi Qianqian's heart ached. At the same time, she was a little afraid. The person in front of her was schizophrenic. When he looked down, he saw Shen Manting hugging her feet and crying bitterly. Her cries were not soft and attracted the gazes of the few pedestrians on the street. Shen Luoan had no choice but to squat down and say, "Let me see." Shen Manting cried even more fiercely. She sat on the ground and hugged her feet. She had no intention of responding to him at all. Shen Luoan felt a headache coming on. He didn't allow her to argue. He reached out and pried her hand away, then pulled her feet over. She turned the soles of her feet toward herself. The red bloodstains on the soles of her feet were very eye-catching. Chapter 2140. Hearing this, Yi Qianqian and Shen Luo were shocked. At the same time, Shen Luo felt a chill down his spine. Adult Manting didn't know about Little Manting's existence, but Little Manting could predict when Adult Manting would wake up. Moreover, she kept asking Shen Luo to only love her, so as to erase the existence of Adult Manting. Wasn't she only 12 years old? Why would a 12-year-old girl have such thoughts? One couldn't help but feel fear and trepidation. Seeing Shen Luo's reaction, Shen Jielia seemed to have expected it. He tapped on the notebook with a pen and said slowly, "Of course, this is just my speculation. Adult Manting might not necessarily not know about Little Manting's existence. But Little Manting's malice towards Adult Manting really exists." Shen Luo said in a low voice, "She doesn't want Adult Manting to wake up." In fact, this was understandable. However, Little Manting seemed to be a little different from what he imagined. It shouldn't be like this. Shen Jielia was silent for a moment and then said, "Brother, you have to take good care of her. Even if she is only 12 years old, the mentality of an orphan still exists." Shen Luo frowned. Shen Jielia looked at him and slowly said, "According to incomplete statistics, most orphans are mentally lonely. They are self-abased, selfish, lonely, and yearn for love and care. There's a difference between Adult Manting and Young Manting. Sister Manting has lived at home for so many years. Compared to He Yunsuan, her state of mind is different. You can't think about Sister Manting's thoughts and focus them on Young Manting." Shen Jielia looked at Shen Luo and waited for his reaction. Shen Luo smiled bitterly. "She is also Manting." "It's not the same," Shen Jielia said. "With split personalities, each person has their own memories, their own personality, and their own thoughts. But between the main personality and the secondary personality, one will be dominant." Hearing this, Shen Luo felt a little uneasy. Yi Qianqian had already guessed something and exclaimed, "Do you mean that Little Manting is now dominant?" Shen Luo's heart suddenly sank. Shen Jielia was silent for a moment and nodded. "Not necessarily, but based on the current situation, it is only a matter of time before she becomes dominant." Shen Luo had mixed feelings. "Brother, Big Manting and Little Manting are both Manting, but Big Manting is the real Manting." After saying that, Shen Jielia had no intention of saying anything else. She tugged at Shen Jilia's sleeve and asked, "Is there no way to level the playing field?" Shen Jielia asked, "Is there no way to level the playing field?" "Yes." Shen Jielia looked at Shen Luo calmly. "Whoever started the trouble needs to end it." When Shen Luo came out of Shen Jilia's room, he saw Nanny He sitting on the sofa. She was facing the children's toy room, peeling beans. Shen Manting felt a little uncomfortable. She reached out and pushed him, saying, "My head hurts." His heart was in a mess in an instant. Anger, grievance, and discomfort immediately assaulted him. Shen Manting was in a trance. She looked at Shen Luo in front of her and subconsciously resisted such negative emotions. If he had been sober, she might have accepted it, but she would not have been so happy. In those vague memories and feelings, she was very cooperative most of the time when they were having sex. That wasn't her. "Yeah," Shen Jielia replied. "Tell me what you're feeling. Otherwise, you'll be in grave danger." "Is it very dangerous?" Shen Manting raised her eyes. Despite her exhaustion, there was a sharpness in her eyes. "Will I die?" When he came back to his senses, he was already drenched in cold sweat. "When did you wake up?" asked Shen Luo. His voice was a little hoarse, as if he had just woken up. Shen Manting wrapped her arms around his waist and said, "I just woke up. Did I scare you?" "A little." At the same time, Shen Luo felt a little upset in his heart. How could she still look so naive? Caven woke up even later. He looked up a bunch of information. "Sleep early, everyone." When Shen Luo woke up, it was already bright outside. The woman in his arms still maintained that position, breathing evenly. Shen Luo gently loosened his grip. As he moved, Shen Manting also opened her eyes at the same time. When she saw Shen Luo'an's face, she seemed a little startled. Then she calmed down and said, "Morning." Shen Luo'an smiled bitterly when he saw her attitude. He could actually recognize who was who between them. Chapter 2146. After maintaining the same posture for a long time, Shen Manting's body felt a little stiff. He stretched out his hand with some difficulty and moved it a little. Just as he twisted his neck, a large hand was placed on his shoulder. His warm palm pressed on her shoulder, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Shen Manting was flattered, and her heartbeat quickened. Shen Manting was a little embarrassed, so she shrugged her shoulders and said softly, "There's no need." Shen Luo'an didn't let go and asked, "Is it sour here?" "I'm getting up." "Or here." Shen Luo'an pressed his palm against her waist again. Shen Manting was on her period, so she wasn't feeling well. Being pressed like this, she felt so comfortable that her eyes narrowed. So, she just let him be and closed her eyes to enjoy it. Shen Luo'an continued massaging and pinching her arm with the same amount of force. Shen Manting flinched and whispered, "It's ticklish." Her soft voice was like a feather brushing past his heart. Shen Luo'an's heart softened. Not only did he not stop, but he pinched her twice more mischievously. Shen Manting couldn't help laughing and said, "Stop fooling around. Get up." Perhaps, even Shen Manting herself didn't realize how charming she was at that moment. Shen Luo'an's heart fluttered. He pulled her into his arms and asked softly, "Do you feel uncomfortable?" "No." Shen Manting squirmed. "Let go of me. I'm going to the bathroom." Shen Luo'an finally released her. She immediately got up and ran to the bathroom barefoot. Shen Manting closed the door. She could clearly sense that she was acting strangely. She seemed to be different from before. Shen Luo'an hadn't done anything overboard, but her heart was pounding. It must be because of young Manting. She knew that little Manting liked Shen Luo'an very much, but she didn't expect her to like him to this extent. She was actually affected as well. Caught off guard, it permeated naturally. After washing up, Shen Manting changed her sanitary pad. Only then did she realize that her period was almost over. For a moment, she was in a trance. It felt like a long time had passed since he woke up. There were so many things to struggle with in his mind that even time seemed to slow down. When they came out, Shen Luo'an walked in with his son. Shen Yuexiao was petite. His chubby little face and big, dark eyes were exactly the same as hers. When he saw her, his little face immediately bloomed into a smile and he shouted, "Mama!" Shen Yuexiao shook off his father's hand and threw himself into Shen Manting's arms. Shen Manting picked him up with a smile and asked, "What's wrong?" "Mommy, ride the wooden horse." The little guy simply expressed what he wanted, and his eyes were full of beautiful brilliance. "Daddy will go too." Shen Manting's lips curled into a smile and she couldn't help but kiss the little boy on the cheek. But soon she looked at Shen Luo'an and asked, "Can I?" She knew her situation. She couldn't completely control her consciousness and body. If she took the baby out, it would be dangerous. However, she had already stood the baby up once yesterday. If she did it again today, it wouldn't be good for the child's education. It is said that one can judge one's age at 3. For a child, the best time to shape his personality was before the age of 3. Chapter 2147. Little Moon was still young, but he understood what his father meant. She pouted her lips and said unhappily, "All right." Shen Luo'an felt a little sorry for him. He rubbed his little head and said, "Daddy will buy you some marshmallows later." The little boy's eyes immediately lit up and he said, "Okay." Shen Luo'an had been exhausted recently. He felt that it had been a long time since he took the child out to play. Shen Manting was wearing a skirt and a coat. She held her son's hand and stood in front of the marshmallow stall with Shen Luo'an, watching the marshmallows being made with her son. The little boy was particularly engrossed. When the red and green marshmallows were ready, he immediately jumped up and shouted, "Hooray!" Shen Manting took it and handed it to him. Little Moon held it in his hand with satisfaction, his little face smiling. Shen Luo'an handed Shen Manting a small bamboo stick. She quickly understood and used the small bamboo stick to dig out the marshmallows and fed them to the little boy. However, Little Moon was greedy and couldn't help but stick out his tongue to lick the marshmallows. Soon, his little face was covered with sticky marshmallows. It's dirty. Slow down. Shen Manting bent down and looked at him helplessly. However, her temperament was completely different from when Shen Manting was in charge. At this moment, the atmosphere was so strong that even Shin Luo could clearly feel her love for the child. After all, little Manting was still a child. Perhaps she knew that this was her son, but in her consciousness after all, it didn't come from her body, so the feeling was not as strong as it was for Shen Manting. Shen Manting fed the little boy candy carefully and patiently. It was such a simple and boring process, but Shin Luo was fascinated by it. It wasn't until the candy was almost finished that Shen Manting realized something was wrong. She looked up and saw Shen Manting looking at her with tenderness in her eyes. Her heart skipped a beat and she immediately straightened up and asked, "What's wrong?" Shin Luo shook his head gently and said, "Let's go to the park with the baby." The park was not far from home. There was a hand-turned wooden horse inside, and many children were willing to play there. Shen Luo picked up the little boy and said, "Daddy will take you to ride the wooden horse." Shen Yuexiao's big eyes lit up. "Thank you, Daddy." "Wipe it first. It's sticky." Shen Luo reached out to Shen Manting. Shen Manting immediately reacted and took out a pack of wet tissues. It was a completely subconscious action. Shen Manting pulled out a wet tissue and handed it to him before she realized that something was wrong. It was too natural. It was as if he had experienced this countless times, and it had become a habit. It was little Manting. Shen Manting felt a little upset. It was as if something that belonged to him had been violated. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. After wiping the little girl's face, he turned around and noticed that something was wrong with her. "What's wrong?" he asked. Shen Manting shook her head. "Let's go." When they arrived at the park, there were already many children running around. Boys and girls played together in groups of 3 to 5. Parents brought their children to play in the park. There were old people and young couples. Shen Yuexiao was in high spirits and struggled to get out of his father's arms. He ran excitedly to the merry-go-round and turned to call out to Shin Luo, "Dad!" Shin Luo carried him up and said, "Hold on tight. The merry-go-round is about to move." Okay. He then looked at Shen Manting and said, "Mommy, let's play together." Chapter 21:48. Shen Manting's lips curled into a smile at her precious son's sincere invitation. But she quickly rubbed the little boy's head and said, "Mommy is an adult. You can't play here. This is for children." "But Mommy used to play here." "That's different. There are adults in the amusement park, but there are only children here." "Oh." Shen Yuexiao didn't quite understand, but he was soon pushed around by Shin Luo. Giggles could be heard endlessly, and there were also the sounds of other children giggling around. Shen Manting looked at her son in front of her and couldn't help smiling. But the sounds around her seemed to be getting farther and farther away. Everything in front of her was white. She was in a daze. She turned her head and reached out to grab Shin Luo. Shin Luo looked at her sideways and asked, "What's wrong?" Shen Manting's vision was getting whiter and whiter, and her consciousness seemed to be dragged by someone. She opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Then her vision darkened, and her whole body softly fell into his arms. Shen Manting didn't know what was wrong with her. She was surrounded by dazzling whiteness. After walking for an unknown amount of time in a daze, he finally saw a small figure. She was thin and sallow. She was 12 years old, but she looked like she was only 10 years old. She was wearing the leftover clothes of the other brothers and sisters in the orphanage. They were washed white and looked a little dirty. Yun-Suan sat in the corner and stared blankly at the little thing that she didn't know what it was. She seemed to notice her arrival and raised her head to look at her. Shen Manting saw herself when she was 12 years old, and her feelings were indescribably complicated. Yun-Suan walked over slowly and smiled at her. "You're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Shen Manting looked at him, and the surroundings were distorted again. She knew that she was dreaming. This kind of dream was different from the days when the body was dominated by another personality. It was completely random and unorganized. But at the same time, she also knew that this was another personality trying to communicate with her and meet her. So she saw Yun-Suan. The surrounding environment changed again and again, and she seemed to return to a very young age in the orphanage, secretly drawing on the wall with her good friend Zhang Meifeng. When the dean found out, he stomped his feet and flew into a rage. He looked for a stick everywhere and tried to beat someone up. The two little girls ran away in fear and amusement. Their eyes were filled with laughter after the prank. After an unknown amount of time, she was suddenly pressed against the washstand and ravaged. Shen Luoen's face was filled with lust. She felt a dull pain in her heart, and she retreated. The scene changed again. She was pinned under the man's body, and the room was completely dark. She could hear the man's low panting and sighing beside her ear. His voice was almost sorrowful as he repeated, "Manting, I love you. Manting, don't hate me." His body was in pain, and his heart was twitching. Suddenly, the voice in her ears disappeared, and a huge force pushed her down. In front of her was Yunsuan's young face, almost twisted with hatred and madness. She said, "Go to hell. You thief. Die. Die. Die." Shen Manting felt as if she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She was suddenly pushed down, and her whole body trembled. When he opened his eyes, everything was dark. His body was already drenched in sweat. "It didn't work. I asked Gilia to give you an injection," Shen Luoen said as he caressed her face. "You'll get better. There's already a way to control little Manting's mental strength. You'll get better slowly." However, they could no longer stay at home. What happened today had scared the elderly and the children. Shen Luoen kissed her gently on the cheek and said softly, "We may need to move." "Where to?" "I have a house in Nanshan district. It's in the suburbs and close to Gilia's hospital. Let's go there, shall we?" "Is that all right?" he asked softly, but she didn't know which word he said stung her eyes. Shen Manting's tears rolled down in an instant, but she quickly forced them back. He quickly lowered his head and kissed the corner of her lips gently. Shen Manting's smile widened, but she didn't say anything. After washing the vegetables, she went to prepare the other ingredients. Shen Luoen felt at ease. When she finished processing the ingredients in her hands, he chased her inside. She was the backbone of the kitchen. With Nanny He at home, Shen Luoen was in charge of the family's food. He was used to not having to worry about food and clothing since he was a child, so he rarely had the opportunity to enter the kitchen. His culinary skills were all learned from watching Shen Jilia cook for Yi Chanqian. The taste wasn't as good as Shen Jilia's, but it wasn't too bad and was still acceptable. After finishing the last dish, he served it on the dining table. Chapter 2151. Shen Luoan's heart was in his throat. His body reacted faster than his brain. He immediately rushed to the door of the room and saw Shen Manting looking at the cabinet on the floor helplessly. The bedside table, which had been placed properly, suddenly fell to the ground. Everything on it fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was no glass or anything that was broken. Shen Luoen stepped forward to support Shen Manting. "What happened?" Shen Manting was a little confused and said, "I think little Manting came out just now." Shen Luoen gently pulled her into his arms and whispered, "And then?" "Then she toppled the cabinet. I didn't want her to do it, so I came back on my own." Shen Manting hugged him. "It was so scary. Don't be afraid. We're fine now, aren't we?" Shen Luoen comforted her softly. "Wash your hands first and eat. We'll come back later." "Okay," Shen Manting replied quickly. For some reason, Shen Luoen felt a little strange. He couldn't tell what was strange about it, but there seemed to be something wrong somewhere. He held Shen Manting's hand as they walked out and washed their hands together. Then, he scooped a bowl of rice for both of them. Shen Manting took it and ate slowly with the chopsticks. He seemed to be especially fond of that plate of crispy fried ribs. Shen Luoen glanced at it and asked, "How is it?" "It's delicious," Shen Manting replied. She glanced at him and said, "But Nanny He's cooking is still the best." Shen Luoan's heart sank when he heard this. Without batting an eyelid, he nodded and said, "Then I will improve next time." Shen Manting didn't say another word. The rest of the journey was very quiet. Shen Luoen was preoccupied with his own thoughts. After dinner, he glanced at Shen Manting and said, "I won't be able to see my son for some time. I've arranged for him to go to kindergarten in September. I'm not sure if he'll be able to get used to it." "Of course he can," Shen Manting said with certainty. Little Moon is the smartest child I've ever met. By September, he'll probably be better than all the other children. Yes, Shen Luan replied, but his mood was low. He casually said, I think so too. A smile appeared on Shen Manting's face. After she finished eating, she cleared the dishes and went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Shen Luoan's heart sank as he watched her busy figure in the kitchen. He sent Shen Jilia a WeChat message. Jilia. Jilia? Shen Luoan. Little Manting is out. Shen Jilia was still packing up when he saw those words. His heart skipped a beat and he immediately asked, What's the situation now? Shen Luoan. She's pretending to be the adult Manting. Jilia. Shen Jilia was a little confused. What does it mean to pretend to be an adult? After a long pause, he said, Do you have violent tendencies? Shen Luoan. Not yet. Jilia. Hang in there. Qianqian and I will be there tomorrow. Chapter 2153. It was as if he hadn't touched her for a long time. Pressing her under his body, Shen Luoan's desire poured out from the depths of his body. Shen Manting hugged him. Her hands eagerly fumbled for the corner of his clothes and lifted his clothes. The two of them were entangled and rolled around each other instinctively. The moment Shen Luoan entered, Shen Manting hugged him contentedly and couldn't help but cry out, Honey, I love you. I love you too, Shen Luoan gently kissed the corner of her lips. No matter who you are, I love you. I only love you. Shen Manting suddenly realized that she seemed to have been exposed. She looked down at Shen Luoan, and it was obvious that he already knew. An indescribable emotion suddenly filled her body. But before she could open her mouth to say anything, her body was like a wave, floating up and down with him. Tears flowed from the corner of her eyes, and Shen Manting climbed onto his waist. The world seemed to have gone far away, and there was only one sentence left in her mind. I love you, I only love you. In the middle of the night, Shen Manting woke up with an extremely unbearable feeling. The man who appeared in her countless nightmares, once again pressed her under his body. Shen Manting couldn't tell what she was feeling, but she followed his movements and let go of herself, moaning happily. Shen Luoan kissed her softly and whispered, Is it you? At the same time, she sank heavily, and Shen Manting groaned, as if the softest place in the depths of her heart was suddenly hit by him. She grabbed his shoulders with both hands and said intermittently, It's me. Shen Luoan slightly stiffened, but Manting under him not only didn't resist, but also gave a more skillful response than little Manting. The night was lingering. When it was over, the sky was already bright. Shen Manting was so tired that she fell into a deep sleep, but Shen Luoan still held her and looked at her. After a long time, he suddenly smiled, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. The next day, he was woken up by the doorbell. He looked at the time, and it was 10:18 in the morning. Shen Luoan was so sleepy that he didn't even take a shower last night. Now that he got out of bed, Shen Luoan felt dizzy walking. Firstly, he didn't have enough sleep. Secondly, he was almost squeezed dry. He casually put on some casual clothes and got up to open the door. When Shen Jilia saw the expression on Shen Luoan's face, he immediately tugged at his wife and said, Brother, hurry up and go inside. You're affecting the city's appearance. Shen Luoan. Yi Qianqian was a little dazed. Before she could recover her wits, Shen Luoan had already walked inside. Shen Jilia and Yi Qianqian moved on their own. Actually, they didn't have many things. They just needed to put their clothes and toiletries in the bag, and everything else would be taken care of. The couple glanced at the closed door of the master bedroom and kindly decided not to disturb it. After diligently buying groceries, they even rang the doorbell once. It was Shen Luoan again. He still had the sleepy expression on his face. Shen Jilia and Yi Qianqian clicked their tongues. Yi Qianqian whispered, Big brother was really intense last night. Shen Jilia replied, I can tell. Tiske. As Yi Qianqian washed the vegetables, she muttered, I'm so jealous. Shen Jilia asked, What do you mean by that? Yi Qianqian snorted. That's exactly what I meant. Chapter 2154. Tisk, Yi Qianqian said in disdain. Paper tiger. Ever since the miscarriage, he didn't dare to do anything to her. Especially since she had been taking Chinese medicine recently, the old Chinese doctor had repeatedly reminded her that she must be careful during sex. Careful during sex, careful during sex, and must not get pregnant during this period of time. As a result, Yi Qianqian was forced to abstain from sex. In the past, Shen Jilie's needs in that regard. Apart from when she could rest during her period, she would always beg him to let her go. Later on, she became the one who took the initiative. Not only did Shen Jilie restrain himself, but he was also extremely gentle. Once or twice a week. After that, she went to take a shower. The gap is a little big. Shen Jilie's heart was ablaze with anger. He placed his hands on either side of her body and gritted his teeth as he said, "Wasn't I taking care of your body?" Yi Qianqian pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Shen Jilie picked her up by her legs and hung her up with his thighs against the wall. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. His wet palms rubbed against her body as if he was ravaging her in revenge. Yi Qianqian felt a little pain from the rubbing. She reached out and pushed him away. "Ouch! It hurts." His voice was muffled, but in this small space, the ambiguous atmosphere overflowed. Ding ding, the sound of a key. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Shen Jilie froze and turned to look. Yi Qianqian immediately returned to her senses and pushed him away. When she saw Shen Luo and standing at the door, she blushed. He quickly turned around and continued to wash the vegetables, pretending that nothing had happened. Shen Luo threw the key on the table and said, "Don't press the doorbell anymore. Open the door yourself next time." Also, Shen Luo glanced at him, "remember to return to your room next time. You're affecting the city's appearance." What a joke. He was the owner of the house. He hadn't tried cooking in the kitchen yet. Yi Qianqian's back was facing them as she washed the vegetables. When she heard this, her face turned even redder. After Shen Luo left, she kicked Shen Jilie. "It's all your fault. Don't provoke me." Shen Jilie bent over and pressed his forehead against hers. He warned her softly, "Otherwise, I'll show you why the sun is so red." "Why?" F***CK. By the time she finished cooking, Shen Luo and Shen Manting had already washed up and came out of the bathroom. It was exactly 12:30. Shen Manting was wearing a thin white sweater with a high collar and a smile on her face. It was the kind of mature and intelligent smile, indescribably charming and amorous. Without a doubt, she was the adult Manting. One look and you can tell that it's Jilie's cooking. Shen Manting took the rice from Yi Qianqian and smiled. "We should be the ones cooking. Let me make dinner." "Who's being polite?" Shen Jilie glanced at her. "You're acting like you don't know me. You can continue eating. Remember to wash the dishes when you're done." "Don't listen to him." Yi Qianqian took a bite of meat and mumbled, "I'll do it later." "You can't do it." Shen Jilie glanced at her with resentment in his eyes. "I have something to do later." Yi Qianqian was speechless. Yi Qianqian's face reddened all the way to her ears. She raised her leg and kicked him under the table. However, he didn't manage to kick her and was sandwiched in the middle. Yi Qianqian tried to pull away but failed. She glared at him resentfully. Shen Manting looked at them and asked, "Did you quarrel?" Shen Luoan's heart was as clear as a mirror. He picked some food for Shen Manting and said, "Don't mind them. Spring is here." Yi Qianqian immediately lowered her head. Chapter 2156. Shen Jilie replied, "Would I have gone mad if you hadn't provoked me?" "Humph." Yi Qianqian was indignant. "Would I have provoked you if you hadn't gone overboard?" How is that too much?" Shen Jilie raised his eyebrows. His large hands moved closer and began to grope her. "Tell me about it." Yi Qianqian dodged, but she still couldn't escape his claws. She asked, "Again?" "I've been saving up the public grain for a long time." Shen Jilie bowed. "It's better to hand it over all at once." Yi Qianqian exclaimed, "Wake up, young man. This is your brother's house." Shen Jilie chuckled and pinched her cheek. "Get up and go take a shower." Yes. Shen Manting was in a surprisingly good state today. Shen Luo had already gone to the laboratory. She was sitting alone in the living room, cutting paper. She suddenly heard the sound of the door opening. She looked up and saw Shen Jilie walking out. He was in high spirits, and his face was beaming with happiness. When Shen Manting saw his expression, she couldn't help but smile and ask, "Why are you so happy?" "Aha!" Shen Jilia sat down and looked at the paper in front of her. "Why are you playing with this again?" "I had nothing better to do, so I came to cause trouble." Shen Manting glanced behind her. "Where's Qian?" "He's inside." "He doesn't want to come out," Shen Jilia replied vaguely. "How's the situation recently?" Shen Manting's smile faded. She lowered her eyes to look at the pattern she had cut in her hands and said softly, "I think I can talk to little Manting now." When Shen Jilia heard that, he looked at her with a straight face. "She doesn't have any bad intentions," Shen Manting said slowly as she stared at her paper cut. "She wants to be with Luo An and live happily ever after. Her previous resistance, suicide, and running away were all because she wanted to force Luo An to compromise. Last night, young Manting sneaked out and pretended to be her. When she heard what Shen Luoan said, she couldn't hold on any longer. "You look fine now," Shen Jishua said. "Yes," Shen Manting replied in a low voice. "Little Manting is also conscious." Shen Jilia froze and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "She's also awake now, but she can only watch." "You've regained control?" "Yes." Rather than taking it back, it would be more accurate to say that little Manting had voluntarily given it up. She put down the scissors and touched the ring on the ring finger of her left hand. She said, "After all, I'm married and have a child. No matter how unwilling I used to be, I have to face reality." Therefore, she decided to accept him. Little Manting must have played a part in it, but Big Manting must have figured it out on her own. Or perhaps unknowingly, the two of them had slowly merged into one, and there was no distinction between you and me. "Sister-in-law," Shen Jilia called out. "The wedding is next month. There's no change." "Yes." Li Jianyue immediately realized that she had been teased. She gritted her teeth and grabbed his face with both hands. She gritted her teeth and said, "You're so annoying. I'll tell Mom and Dad." Li Mosen chuckled and said, "Sit tight." His speed suddenly increased. Li Jianyue immediately exclaimed and hugged his waist. Just as the small bicycle entered the campus, there was a frenzied shout from the surroundings. "Oh my God! Who is that?" "Li Mosen. Has a girlfriend?" Chapter 2160. Li Mosen, a senior in grade 12, had always been a godlike existence in Kongya Aristocratic High School. Not only was he good-looking, but he was also good at sports. He was the captain of the school's basketball team and the champion of the provincial junior math competition. He had won all kinds of awards since he was a child. The most unbearable thing was that he had an appearance that made people crazy. He had deep facial features, gem-like blue eyes, and slightly curly black hair that was elegant and sexy. Every time he sweated on the basketball court, his every move was enough to cause the girls to scream wildly. However, on the first day of the new school year, the most handsome guy in school actually brought his girlfriend to school. For a moment, it caused a sensation in the whole school. Many girls' hearts were broken. They bit their handkerchiefs and wished they could go to grade 12 Class A to confront Li Mosen. Tell me, do you love me or her?" However, no one had the guts to do so. Watching Li Mosen put down the little girl in the school uniform from afar, the little girls who had already secretly fallen in love with him burst into tears. Li Jianrui certainly felt that she had been surrounded by many people's eyes, but she did not mind. She carried her bag and hurried in the direction of the school building. "What's the hurry?" Li Mosen said helplessly. "Do you know the way? I'll take you there." "Then hurry up." Li Jianrui was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She watched him park the bicycle and then took his hand. "Hurry up. The bell hasn't rung yet," Li Mosen said as he threw his bag on his shoulder. "Look, they are all walking slowly. Oh, they are seniors, and I am a freshman. Of course it's different." Li Jianrui was not convinced. "I still have to go make new friends." Li Mosen laughed and reached out to rub her fluffy head. "Comb your hair. You still want to make friends with someone like this? It's frightening." Such an action caused the campus to once again be filled with wails, and more onlookers gathered to watch. Li Jianrui, who was insensitive, also felt that something was wrong. She looked around and whispered, "Brother Mosen,
Why do I feel that many people are looking at me? Well, Li Mosen gave her a lazy look.
You look good, of course they are looking at you. The face of Li Jianyue was very similar to Su Qianxi's. However, his eyebrows and eyes were very similar to Li Xiqing's, so it was obvious that he was the child of Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi. But the only flaw was that student Li Ersu had successfully inherited their good genes, but at the same time, they had gone awry. Li Xiqing was smart, Su Qianxi was strong, and even Li Jianqian was a freak who had skipped grades since he was a child. When it was Li Jianyue's turn, she couldn't be said to be stupid. It was just that with so many comparisons, her qualifications seemed to be more ordinary. Li Jianyue felt that something was amiss when she heard his words. I don't think they think I'm pretty. They just hate the way they look at me. I didn't offend them, did I? It's as if they want to eat me up. Li Mosen smiled. That might be because of me. I'm a little famous in school.
Oh, is that so? Li Jianyue looked around and finally believed his a little.
After being led by Li Mosen to his own class, the bell for the next class rang. Li Jianyue could clearly feel that everywhere they went, there were countless eyes looking at them.
Or perhaps they were looking at her.
Chapter 2161. Li Jianyue had been very delicate since she was a child. Li Xiqing liked long hair, so she had seaweed-like hair since she was a child. Her skin was naturally healthy and delicate. It was so fair and delicate that no matter who she stood next to, it was especially fair and delicate. She was no exception when compared to her own mother. Especially when she smiled, it was sweet and lovely, revealing 2 small canine teeth. Compared to Su Qianxi's quiet and introverted personality, she was more lively. On the first day of registration, Li Jianyue relied on her outer appearance, and many people came to talk to her in several classes. There were men and women. The morning classes ended, but in fact, there was not much content. The atmosphere was very relaxed and pleasant. Just at noon, when Li Jianyue was still packing her school bag, suddenly there were exclamations around her. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a sensation. Li Jianyue looked up and saw a tall figure walking over. He was more than 1.8 meters tall, especially among his peers.
Who is this? Ah, you don't know.
This is a senior in year 3.
His name is Li Mosen. Ah, so handsome.
He must be mixed race.
His eyes are so beautiful.
He's coming over. Could it be that he's looking for me? In your dreams. Li Jianyue heard the discussion around her and yawned.
She stood up and said, Why are you here?
The uniform of the aristocratic high school was better than that of ordinary schools. The boy's uniform was a white shirt with the school emblem embroidered on the left chest. It was very exquisite with black gold buttons. The school pants were a pair of black trousers, which outlined his straight and slender legs. I'm taking you to eat. Li Mosen put one hand in the trouser pocket of his school uniform, looking especially sunny and handsome. Ah, Mosen, Senior Mosen, look here.
So handsome, my idol.
He looks like a prince in a fairy tale. Li Jianyue was speechless.
She looked at Li Mosen and muttered in a low voice. Are they blind?
How is this handsome? Li Mosen reached out and patted her head. You have no taste. There are so many of my fans in school. You don't know how lucky you are.
Hey, don't touch my hair.
It's all messed up. Li Jianyue slapped his hand away. It took me a long time to comb it. I still have class in the afternoon. There were a few boys following behind Li Mosen. All of them were from the basketball team. From the moment they saw Li Jianyue, their eyes lit up.
One of them stepped forward and extended his hand to Li Jianyue.
Hello, Sister Li. My name is Zhong Yikuan. You can just call me Traditional Chinese Medicine. Just as she was about to reach out, Zhong Yikuan's hand was slapped away. Another guy squeezed over and smiled. Ignore him. Traditional Chinese Medicine is a freak. My name is Lu Yuanyang. You can call me Brother Yang.
Get lost.
Zhong Yi shoved Lu Yuanyang away. I was here first.
Pooh, you pervert.
Don't scare Sister Li. I'm scared when I see your face. Go away. F***CK. I'll beat you up. Come on, do you think I'm afraid of you? Li Jianyue. Li Mosen curled his lips and stepped forward to hold her hand. Let's go. Ignore them. Ah, who's that girl?
They're holding hands.
They're holding hands. Could it be his girlfriend? Wait, my heart can't take it anymore.
My idol. Li Jianyue felt her scalp go numb in the chaos.
The thought of having to spend the next 3 years in such an environment filled her with complicated emotions. Yes, you're right. It's the first time I've written a school novel, yeah. I'll go with my usual style. Sweet and torturous. Those who want a girl's heart are about to fall into the pit. Chapter 2162. Along the way, they were the most eye-catching presents. When they finally arrived at the school cafeteria, Li Jianrui thought that she would be able to relax. She didn't expect to be stared at by the surrounding people. Li Jianrui tugged at Li Mosen's clothes weakly and asked, "Brother Mosen, why are people looking at us?" "Because Mosen is the school hunk," Zongyi suddenly replied. "A lot of people like Mosen. He's handsome and good at studying. He has a lot of fans," traditional Chinese medicine answered suddenly, his voice coming from behind. Li Jianrui's eyes widened.
Fans.
"That's right," Lu Yuanyang chimed in and said in a low voice. "They're all die-hard fans who only look at looks. Mosen is mixed race, so he's eye-catching just by looking at his face. You're also good-looking, so I'm guessing there will be a lot of people looking at you." Li Jianrui had a bad feeling in her heart.
She muttered. Why do I feel that my days in the future won't be easy?
"No," Zongyi patted his chest. "I will protect you in the future. If anyone bullies you, I will be the first to deal with them." Lu Yuanyang looked at Zhong Yikuan meaningfully and said, "It's good enough that you can protect yourself." "Haha, I'm not like you. You are just a street rat."
"I'm still better than you."
"Who doesn't know you now? Everyone thinks that you are gay with Mosen." "Hey, what's wrong with me? Being gay with Mosen is not being gay with you. Why are you talking so much? Mosen loves me and I love Mosen. If we are gay, then let's be gay. Right, Mosen?" Zongyi winked at Li Mosen coquettishly. "Bring me along for the team battle tonight."
"No," Li Mosen said without hesitation.
"After eating, I will bring her to familiarize herself with the environment."
"Okay."
"No problem." Li Jianrui hadn't recovered from their strange behavior when she heard Mosen ask, "Do you want to take a nap at noon?"
"No." "Then let's go shopping later."
Li Mosen made the final decision. Li Jianrui didn't have any objections. But after Li Mosen said this, she suddenly felt that the surrounding people were looking at her strangely. After getting their food, they obediently found a seat. The 4 of them occupied a table. Li Jianyue felt as if there were needles on her back. She finally finished her meal and walked around to familiarize herself with the environment. Then, she hurriedly said that she wanted to return to the classroom. However, when he returned to the classroom, he found that everyone was moving around. When Li Jianyue came in, many people glanced at her and then left in groups of 2 or 3. She walked back to her seat in the morning. Her bag was placed on the table, and in her seat sat a girl wearing glasses. The girl looked ordinary, but her eyes were especially sharp and bright under her glasses. When he saw Li Jianyue coming over, he adjusted his glasses and asked, "Are you Li Jianyue?" Li Jianyue was stunned, but she quickly nodded. "You know me."
"I'm not the only one who knows you now."
"The whole school knows you," the bespectacled girl said as she looked at Li Jianyue. "You're really pretty." Li Jianyue felt her hair stand on end. She smiled and said, "Thank you. The teacher has finished arranging the seats. Your seat is in the 4th row of the 3rd group, the same table as Quan Jingyi." The bespectacled girl pointed at the seat. A boy was already lying on it. The remaining seat was empty. "Thank you." Chapter 2163.
"It's Li Mosen again."
Li Jianyue was speechless and said, "My surname is Li and so is his. He is my brother." The bespectacled girl looked incredulous. "He is mixed race and you are obviously not. How can you be brother and sister? Don't lie to me." "It's true. He is my brother. If you don't believe me, you can ask him." Li Jianyue felt a little annoyed. She had been surrounded by Li Mosen ever since she entered school. She was speechless as if she was a monkey. The bespectacled girl could also see that Li Jianyue was a little annoyed. She quickly said, "My name is Han Yu. You can call me Xiao Yu. Let's be friends. I was just curious." He pushed up his glasses and smiled brightly. Then he glanced at the table he had just pointed at and said, "However, I have to tell you that when Quan Jingyi was in junior high school, he was a bully. He had a bad temper. If he got angry, he would hit someone. You'd better not provoke him." "How do you know?" Hanyu pushed her glasses and smiled meaningfully. "Because I used to be in the same junior high as him." "Oh." Li Jianyue didn't take it to heart. "I'll go over first." "Okay." Hanyu nodded. After watching her leave, she immediately lowered her head and quietly took out her phone from her bag. She sent a message to the private group chat. "Big news, the girl who was brought to school by a man today is his sister." Li Jianyue walked over. A boy who was obviously very tall was lying on the table. He was crooked and breathing. She could tell that he was sleeping soundly. Li Jianyue hung up her bag and took out a piece of tissue to wipe the seat. After wiping the chair and the table, she threw the tissue away. When she walked back, the boy who was sleeping soundly just now got up. He yawned and stretched. There were red marks on his face from his clothes. His hair was a little messy and his legs were very long. He directly crossed Li Jianyue's position and blocked her way. Li Jianyue was not in a hurry. She waited for him to finish before walking in. Quan Jingyi glanced at Li Jianyue and asked, "Classmate, what time is it?" Li Jianyue glanced at her watch. 1:48. "Thank you." Quan Jingyi replied with a word and got up to loosen his muscles. As soon as he stood up, he felt a heavy pressure. Li Jianyue couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. It was really high. Is he overdeveloped? Li Jianyue took out the book and muttered to herself. He averted his gaze and realized that he wasn't the only one looking at him. The other students in the class couldn't help but look over as well. However, they quickly averted their gazes. Quan Jingyi left. Almost as soon as he walked out of the door, there were whispers in the class. "That's Quan Jingyi. Stay away from him." "Who is that?" "Problem boy. He has a bad reputation. I used to be in the same junior high school as him. He skipped classes every 2 or 3 days to get into fights and was almost expelled. It was only after his parents suppressed it that he was able to graduate smoothly." "Is their family very powerful?" "Damn powerful. His father is the deputy mayor. Don't you think he's awesome?" Li Jianyue already knew what to do and silently moved her chair a little further away. It wasn't until the bell rang that Quan Jingyi returned to his seat unhurriedly. He looked much more sober than before. Li Jianyue found that he was quite good-looking. He had a high nose and the skin on his face wasn't pale, but he looked very masculine. Chapter 2164. Quan Jingyi's gaze was a little cold. The way he looked at her wasn't friendly. Li Jianyue didn't dodge his question. Instead, she smiled and said, "Everyone says that you're a bad student. I've never seen a bad student like you." She turned her head and muttered to herself, "I didn't expect him to be so good." Quan Jingyi didn't expect to get such an answer. He was slightly stunned, but he quickly turned his head back. Inexplicably, the tips of his ears felt a little hot. The first class in the afternoon was history. The history teacher seemed to be a particularly shrewd female teacher. She wore a pair of rimless glasses, and the thick lenses covered her small eyes. At this moment, she pushed her glasses and said, "Hello everyone, I'm your history teacher. My surname is Zhang. The Zhang from Gongzhang. Do you hear me?" "Yes." "In my class, I don't need students who don't listen. If you don't want to listen, you can leave, but you're not allowed to sleep or be distracted. Otherwise, I'll deal with you as truancy. Do you understand?" "Understood." "Louder, I didn't hear you." "Understood." This time, the voices were much louder. Li Jianyue was also one of the voices. Quan Jingyi glanced at her with a faint smile. His eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. Li Jianyue clearly saw it and was a little confused. Teacher Zhang pushed her glasses and nodded with satisfaction. She said, "Now let's start the class. Turn to the first page." Quan Jingyi had just had enough sleep, but he didn't sleep. He opened the textbook and sat in his seat in a daze. Li Jianyue wasn't particularly intelligent since she was young. However, in order to catch up with her academic results and not let herself fall too far behind, she was very serious when listening to the class. As she listened, she suddenly heard a cry of surprise. Then, an unknown white object flew over. Li Jianyue saw it from the corner of her eyes. It was the teacher's pen. She was shocked and then saw that the pen was steadily caught by Quan Jingyi. The students in the class were shocked and whispered, "So powerful? He really practiced. The delinquents are extraordinary. Who is that? I heard that his name is Quan Jingyi. He's very arrogant." Silence. Teacher Zhang looked at Quan Jingyi with a straight face. "You're spacing out during class. You're quite quick to pick up the pen. Bring it up." Quan Jingyi stood up and took the brush back. "What's your name?" "Quan Jingyi." Quan Jingyi sounded a little lazy, but he was still cooperative. However, his sloppy attitude made Teacher Zhang very unhappy.
He shouted, "Write it yourself."
Quan Jingyi was a little impatient, but he still picked up the pen and wrote his name on the paper. Li Jianyue realized that his handwriting was quite nice. It looked a little elegant and sloppy, but it was very clear. "Your handwriting is not bad. You may leave." Chapter 2165.
How would he dare to do that now?
His father used to be the deputy mayor of a neighboring city. Now, he's the mayor of Kingstown. He should restrain himself. Many people are watching him. "Oh, I see. I thought his father just married a mistress and he wanted to leave a good impression on his stepmother." Their provocative words caused more and more people to look at them. The information in their words seemed to be a little too much. Li Jianyue glanced at Quan Jingyi. Unexpectedly, Quan Jingyi just glanced at them lazily and directly leaned on the table without saying a word. When those people saw that, they felt unconvinced. They kicked his table and said, "Hey, what are you afraid of? You don't dare to move after being poked at?" "Sigh, forget it. He's probably afraid of being expelled. Now, he's even more timid than a woman." Ha ha ha. But no matter what they said, Quan Jingyi didn't react at all. Those people looked at him and felt that they were asking for trouble. Li Jianyue was angry when she heard that. She whispered, "Hey, Quan Jingyi." Quan Jingyi ignored her and lay down lazily. Li Jianyue muttered, "What? I thought he was very powerful." Everyone had demonized Quan Jingyi. It made her feel that Quan Jingyi was a hot-tempered person who would hit people at the slightest disagreement. Now it seemed that he was just like that. Although Li Jianyue didn't want her deskmate to be a bad student, after hearing so many rumors, she still felt a little disappointed in her heart. Soon, after the next few classes, Quan Jingyi didn't say a word. He was indeed very obedient. After school, Li Jianyue went to the bathroom first. When she came out, she found a few girls standing by the sink, looking at her with a smile. Li Jianyue was startled and took a step back. But, maybe they weren't looking at me? After thinking about it, she mustered up her courage and squeezed toward the sink. "Hello, Junior." One of the girls had dyed yellow hair. She was also dressed like a hooligan and had 2 earrings in her ears. When Li Jianyue heard this, she immediately realized that they might really be looking for her. While washing her hands, Li Jianyue pretended not to hear. "Junior, your name is Li Jianyue, right?" Now that she had been called out, Li Jianyue could no longer pretend to be dumb. He could only turn around and ask weakly, "What's the matter?" Li Jianyue took after Su Qianxi's looks and personality. Some things should be avoided if possible. She could tell at a glance that these girls were bad students. It was only the first day of school and they were already looking for trouble with her. Without a doubt, it must be Li Mosen's rotten peach blossom. Li Jianyue felt a little wronged. She had already created a villain in her heart and beat Li Mosen over and over again. But who knew? The bad girl giggled and said, "It's nothing, I just want to make friends with you. My name is Shirshir. I'm your brother's fan." Ah! Li Jianyue was a little confused. "How did you know that I'm his sister?" "I guessed it." Shirshir's eyes curved into a smile. "Look at how pretty you are. Mosen treats you so well. He brings you with him everywhere he goes. He even sent you to school this morning. You should know that Mosen rarely talks to girls in school, let alone treats you so well. So you must be his sister." Shirshir's eyes curved into a smile. Li Jianyue. Chapter 2166. When Shirshir heard this, she didn't mind. She patted Li Jianyue's shoulder and said, "So sister, can you tell me what kind of girl your brother likes?" Shurshu's face bloomed into a chrysanthemum-like smile, and her flaming red lips were particularly eye-catching. Li Jianyue was silent for a moment and said, I don't know what kind of girl Brother Mosen likes, but I know what kind of girl he hates. What kind of girl?
Disheveled.
Li Jianyue glanced at her open neckline. Inside the neckline, everything that should be there was not there, but she had left it open. It was really not a good look. When Shurshu heard this, she immediately fastened the neckline and asked, What else? Heavy makeup, Li Jianyue said mercilessly. Shurshu's expression changed immediately and said, Are you serious? Li Jianyue nodded sincerely and said, Really? Shurshu was a little frustrated and asked, What else? Hair dyed.
Shurshu was angry.
You deliberately caught me and said that, right?
Li Jianyue looked innocent.
No, what I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can ask Brother Mosen. Shurshu was speechless. If she could talk to Li Mosen, would she need to come to the toilet to block people? Is there anything else? Shurshu asked. Li Jianyue thought for a moment and said, Maybe he likes gentle girls. After all, there are no boys who don't like gentle girls. Shurshu's face was completely gloomy. She looked at Li Jianyue and looked like she was about to cry. Li Jianyue was shocked. She hurriedly said, Don't cry. Actually, you can just be yourself. If you have your own characteristics, people who like you will still like you. It's useless to deliberately cater to other people's preferences. Shurshu didn't quite believe it. Really?
Li Jianyue looked serious.
Really? After coming out of the toilet, when Li Jianyue returned to class to get her school bag, the students who stayed on duty were almost done cleaning. When one of the boys saw Li Jianyue, the tips of his ears were slightly red. He came forward to greet her. Hello, my name is Zhang Hao. Are you Li Jianyue?
Li Jianyue smiled.
Yes, hello.
Arsu.
Li Mosen's voice came from outside. A few girls followed behind him, pushing and shoving each other shyly. When Li Jianyue saw Li Mosen, she said to Zhang Hao, My brother is here to pick me up. I'm going back. See you tomorrow. Zhang Hao blushed and nodded. Okay, see you tomorrow. Li Jianyue carried her school bag and walked out. She found that Li Mosen's complexion was particularly bad. Li Mosen reached out and tucked her under his armpit. He lifted her up like a little chick and said, You're so capable. I thought you were lost. Li Jianyue was already used to his way of carrying himself. However, in school, she couldn't help but blush. She flapped her legs and said, I'm still wearing a dress. Don't cause me to be exposed. Hearing that, Li Mosen put her down and pressed his big hand on her head. Don't talk to boys randomly in the future. There are a lot of liars in high school. You're so stupid. Don't get cheated. Go. Li Jianyue slapped his hand away. Why are your words getting more and more annoying? My brother doesn't scold me anymore. It's your turn. You're the stupid one. Chapter 2167. Li Jianyue was pinned down and could clearly feel the envious and hateful gazes around her. She twisted and said, Brother Mosen, a girl came to the toilet to stop me just now. She seemed to like you a lot and asked me what you like. What did you say? Oh, I just said a bunch of things. Anyway, I said what she was like. Li Mosen couldn't help but pinch her cheek. Naughty. Li Jianyue was still a little proud. Anyway, you won't have puppy love in high school. You won't embarrass me, will you? No. Li Mosen looked helpless. Mom and Dad are coming back next week. Are you happy? No, Li Jianyue said with a look of disgust. Mom and Dad only know how to show off. It's so infuriating. Mom is already so old, but Dad still coaxes her like a treasure all day. He holds her in his hands and is afraid that she will fall. He's so annoying. Dad is a good man. You have to find a husband like this in the future. Do you understand? Dad is good, but there won't be a second Li Xiqing in the world. Who said that? Li Mosen found his car and saw a pile of gifts and love letters in the back seat. I can be so good. If you don't believe me, you can wait and see in the future. As he spoke, he picked up the pile of things and threw them into the nearby trash can. Li Jianyue was shocked and said, How can you do this? You threw so many things? You're not throwing them away?
Li Mosen also looked at Li Jianyue strangely. There are so many things here.
Where should I put them?
School bag.
My bag is full. I can't put these things in.
Then it's a pity that you threw them away.
Li Jianyue's heart ached.
And the chocolate. Li Mosen laughed. Get in the car.
Li Jianyue directly jumped up and grabbed the clothes at his waist. Next time there's candy for me. Don't throw it away.
Got it. When they returned home, Nanny Rong had already prepared the meal.
Seeing them return, she wiped her hands with a smile and said, "Wash your hands quickly and eat. By the way, your grandfather just called and told you to rest and study early after eating. You must not play games anymore, or else he will call to check on you." Li Jianyue stuck out her tongue and shrugged her shoulders.
However, with her sly look, it was obvious what she was thinking.
Li Mosen didn't expose her and ate quietly. Sure enough, as soon as Li Jianyue finished eating, she immediately picked up her phone and went to the battlefield. "No homework?"
"I finished it at school,"
Li Jianyue said confidently. Aya, Brother Mosen, come and help me. I can't beat them." Li Mosen sat behind her and reached out with both hands to hold her. He took the phone and looked at the score. He clicked his tongue in disdain and said, "You're as fierce as a tiger, but your score is 0. You're really the best Zhuge Liang I've ever seen." Li Jianyue replied, "Be more respectful when you speak. It's 1 against 5, all right? Is there a difference?" Li Mosen said disdainfully. Then, his slender fingers operated on the screen.
"Ah, that's too despicable.
1 against 5.
Li Jianyue clenched her small fists excitedly and shouted, "That's too much."
"What's the hurry?
I'm full HP." Li Mosen looked very calm.
He walked coquettishly between the 5 people and quickly killed 3 of them. 6,666. Li Jianyue gestured.
"Run."
However, Li Mosen had no intention of running at all. He directly used a big move to kill the support with low HP and finally defeated the tank.
Pentakill.
"Ah, I want to take a screenshot."
"Wait."
Li Jianyue held his hand excitedly. She didn't realize that the 2 of them were directly pressed together. Chapter 2168. Li Jianyue didn't seem to be aware that she was being despised. She even said proudly, "What's wrong with me being promising? I'm the one who's promising." Li Jianyue posted her perfect 5-kill record on her WeChat moments. She said proudly, "Brother Mosen, help me play another round. I've been wanting to train Sister Diao Chan recently, but it's too difficult. Do your homework first."
"I'm done."
"Even so, you're not allowed to play. What will you say when Grandpa calls to check on you later?" "I'll say that Brother Mosen took me to play." Li Jianyue raised her eyebrows and said proudly, "My brother is coming back soon. I'll have to PK with him then. He'll always look down on me." "Your brother won't compete with you," Li Mosen said.
"Why?
Insulting my intelligence.
You're so annoying."
Li Jianyue pushed him away. "I'll play by myself then."
"The last one."
Okay." Li Mosen sat beside her and watched her play the game quietly. After the last round, Li Jianyue went to take a shower. When she came back, she found that there were many likes and comments on her WeChat moments. "Rong Pan Pan. 66666 Miss, take me flying. Oh Xiao. When did Sister Ursu become so powerful? I don't believe it. Brother Mosen must have given it to you to play with." Li Jianyue replied proudly. "Yes, how about it? If you're not convinced, let's fight." Big Brother, Dear Father, Dear Queen Mother, and Brother Chu all liked the post. When she saw Brother Chu, a beautiful smile appeared on Li Jianyue's face. She clicked on Yu Chulin's profile picture and saw a new update. The basketball court is always exceptionally quiet late at night. The accompanying picture was of a basketball court and a red figure doing a slam dunk. Li Jianqian was getting taller. His back was slender, and the ordinary red jersey looked particularly handsome on him. Li Jianyue liked the post and commented, "When will Brother Chu come to Kingstown to play?" "I miss you," Brother Chu quickly replied. "Tomorrow." When Li Jianyue saw it, she thought that he was joking and quickly replied, "Then you will be a puppy tomorrow." "Brother Chu, what should we do when we get there?" Li Jianyue replied, "I'm a little pig." Imperial capital. While Li Zhenqian was sweating profusely, Yu Chulin was drinking water by the side of the basketball court. He suddenly laughed as he held his phone. Li Zhenqian panted heavily and threw the basketball aside. "You're flirting with my sister again." "How could I?" Although Yu Chulin said that, his phone quickly replied, "It's a deal. Treat me to a meal tomorrow." Li Zhenqian opened a bottle of water for himself and quickly gulped it down before asking, "Did you tell her?" "I told her, but she didn't believe me." Yu Chulin threw his phone on the grass and lay down. Looking up, the night sky of the imperial capital was always pitch black. Not a single star. Chapter 2169. Li Zhenrui was in class and only found out about the news when it was time for lunch break. Li Mosen called out to her at the door of her classroom, "Li Zhenrui, let's go." Li Mosen had always been eye-catching. Many people looked over and were extremely excited when he shouted. She thought that Li Mosen was going to take her to lunch. Unexpectedly, when she stood up, she heard Li Mosen shout, "Bring your bag. I'm applying for leave for you." Damn, are they going on a date?
Bull*T, they are brother and sister.
It's good to have a brother. He's so bold to skip class. Aw, he's so handsome. Senior Mosen, is Li Zhenrui his sister? Why don't they look alike at all? Li Zhenrui was surrounded by shouts. She bit the bullet and picked up her bag and walked forward. Li Mosen swaggered out of the campus with her. Li Zhenrui couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? Why did you ask for leave?" "Your brother is back. Didn't you know?"
Li Mosen pressed her head.
"Yu Chulin is here too." Li Zhenrui's mouth formed an O shape.
She couldn't believe it and said, "No way?"
"Really? Didn't they tell you?"
Li Mosen raised his eyebrows.
"I saw that you guys were chatting excitedly on WeChat." Li Zhenrui didn't realize that there was a hint of jealousy in her words. She took out her phone from her bag and opened it. Indeed, she received a few WeChat messages. "Brother Chu. We're here, Brother Chu. Piglet, treat me to lunch." Li Zhenrui looked a little regretful and said, "I thought he was joking with me. Boo-hoo, how did I become a piglet?"
Li Mosen saw her expression and pouted.
"It's fine if you call him that. Can you really become a piglet?" "No, this is a kind of attitude, a kind of dignity." Li Zhenrui said seriously. "I could have called him a puppy."
Li Mosen glanced at her.
"Childish."
"Oh."
Li Zhenrui was even more regretful.
She hugged Li Mosen's arm and said, "What should we do?
"Are we going to see Brother and Brother Chu now?" Seeing her expression, Li Mosen was a little annoyed.
He lifted her under his armpit and directly carried her away.
"Yeah.
Aya, what should I do?
I'm wearing such an ugly school uniform.
My brother will laugh at me when he sees it."
"How is it ugly?" Li Mosen was almost defeated by her. "It's beautiful and cute."
"Really?"
Li Zhenrui's eyes lit up. "I was talking about the school uniform." Li Zhenqian and Yu Chulin had arrived a long time ago. The family had arranged for a chauffeur to pick them up from the airport. When Li Zhenrui and Li Mosen returned home, they saw the two teenagers sitting on the sofa. One was red, and the other was white. Both of them looked very fair. Li Zhenqian was 17 years old and looked even better. His eyebrows and eyes were very similar to Li Xiqing's, but his facial features were also similar to Su Qianxi's, except that he was more angular and looked more masculine. The young man's immature face carried a youthful aura. When she saw Li Zhenqian, Li Zhenrui's eyes lit up and she shouted, "Wow, brother!" Li Zhenqian was originally sitting on the sofa talking to Yu Chulin. When he heard that, his gaze looked over. His eyes softened and he stood up. Li Zhenrui threw her school bag aside and pounced on Li Zhenqian. She shouted, "Brother! I missed you so much. Kiss me. Mua." Chapter 2170. Li Zhenrui refused to budge. She hung on to him and pouted. "Give me a kiss. Just give me a kiss." Li Zhenqian pulled her down and threw her onto the sofa. Li Zhenrui was not annoyed at being thrown. Instead, she giggled. She turned to look at the youth in red and called out, "Brother Chu." Yu Chulin reached out and patted her head. He smiled and said, Ursu has grown up. But aren't you 17 years old? Why did you repeat a year? Li Jianyue felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced her heart. She sat up with her hands on her hips and said, "You're the one who repeated a year. It's normal for a 17-year-old to be in the first year of high school." Is that so? Yu Chulin looked at Li Jianqian in disbelief. Li Jianqian happened to look over and raised his eyebrows. Invisible contempt was the most fatal. Li Jianyue felt as if her heart had been stabbed by knives. She wanted to cry but no tears came out. "Well, Ursu, this is normal." Li Mosen walked over and sat beside Li Jianyue. "You two perverts can't be compared to our Ursu." "Exactly," Li Jianyue immediately echoed. She seemed to have found comfort and hid behind Li Mosen. "Brother Mosen is the best. You two only know how to bully me. You're the one who spoiled her and made her repeat a year, right?" Yu Chulin immediately put a label on him. "You spoiled her since she was young. She will suffer in the future. You can't spoil her forever." His words were a little harsh. Li Mosen glanced at Yu Chulin and said, "I'm telling the truth. Let Daesu handle the outstanding matters at home. Ursu is a girl. It's fine as long as she's happy." Yu Chulin frowned. "That works." He looked at Li Jianqian. "Aren't you going to do anything about it?" Mosen is right. It was rare for Li Jianqian to be on the opposite side of Yu Chulin. Li Jianyue's eyes lit up. Just when she thought that he really doted on her, she heard Li Jianqian say, "I don't expect her to be outstanding with someone like her." Li Jianyue took an apple from the table and threw it over. She said angrily, "Annoying." Li Jianqian caught it firmly and smiled. "We're not eating now. Grandpa wants us to go back to the old mansion for dinner." "Now." Li Jianyue glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's already past 1 o'clock. Grandpa, Grandma, and little brother have eaten, right?" "I don't know, but Moyun just called me and cried to me, saying that you don't care about him." Li Mosen was a little gloating. "Maybe my brother has been fed into a little fat pig." Li Jianyue. How ruthless. Yu Chulin reminded her sternly, "That's your younger brother." Li Xiqing had a pair of twins. The older one was a boy named Daesu, and the younger one was a girl named Ursu. In addition, there was an adopted son and a second child. The adopted son was called Li Mosen, and the second child was called Li Moyun. More than once, Li Moyun wondered why his elder brother and sister were called Daesu and Ursu while he didn't even have the word Su. Later, when he found out that his dog was called Little Su, he felt better. They were the same species as the dog, but he and Brother Mosen were different from them. With this understanding, Li Moyun even walked with the wind. When he talked to Daesu and Ursu, he would raise his head and puff out his chest. He was extremely proud. However, pride came with a price. One time, he was so proud that he said to Li Jianyue, "Brother is so smart, but you're so stupid. Did mom and dad carry the wrong baby when they gave birth to you?" Li Ursu was upset for the whole day. Later, she didn't know how Li Mosen found out, but he reported it to Li Xiqing, who had always doted on his daughter. Chapter 2171. Li Ursu was upset for the whole day. Li Mosen somehow found out about it and reported it to Li Xiqing, who had always doted on his daughter. As for Li Moyun, he was thrown to the old mansion by Li Xiqing. From then on, he didn't even walk with his head held high. He didn't even raise his head or puff out his chest. He was afraid that he would bump into his grandmother and smile at her kind face. "Little Moyun, Grandma just made some food. Come and try it." "Little Moyun, Grandma bought some snacks for you. They are especially good for your health. Come and try it." "Little Moyun, Grandma bought some revision materials for you. They are especially good for your studies. Come and try it." Li Moyun thought to himself, "I was wrong. I want to go home." However, there was no use regretting it. Not only did Li Moyun have to settle his daily needs at the old mansion, but he was also sent to and from school by his grandmother. Every day, his grandmother watched him eat 2 big bowls of rice. He grew from a thin 11-year-old boy to a little fatty who weighed 160 kilograms. Li Mosen was determined not to let him return to Wuxia. He had thought that since they both had the same name, they could be brothers. He was too naive. When he heard that Li Zhenqian had returned from the capital and would be studying in Kingstown, he almost burst into tears. When he heard the commotion outside, the little fatty skipped out. When he saw his biological brother getting out of the black Bentley, he immediately ran up to him and shouted, "Brother! My biological brother!" When Li Zhenqian saw Li Moyun, he burst out laughing. Yu Chulin looked sympathetic. "Moyun, do you still remember me?"
"Brother Chu."
Li Moyun sniffled and looked aggrieved. When he saw Li Mosen, he shot him a hateful look. "You're a bad guy."
Li Mosen looked at him seriously.
"I'm doing it for your own good. Look at how well you've been eating recently."
Li Zhenrui laughed heartily.
"Fatty."
"Shut up."
Li Moyun was furious, but he quickly pulled Li Zhenqian and said, "Brother, Grandma said she misses you. Come in quickly and let Grandma see how thin you are." His words were filled with deep resentment. Li Zhenqian smiled and followed him in. Li Zhenrui laughed mercilessly. "Little fatty, don't walk so fast." Li Mosen followed him in and said, "It's just a summer vacation. Why do you look like you're blowing air into your lungs?" The little fatty got even angrier and turned around to hit him. However, Li Mosen was tall and easily blocked him. He said, "Little shorty, you can hit me again when you grow up." The little fatty was full of grievances and hugged Li Zhenqian's thigh. "Brother. Big brother. Please tell Dad that I don't want to stay at Grandma's house anymore. I don't want to eat so much." Boo-hoo, the little girl next door used to blush when she saw me. But now, she even laughs at me when she sees me. The difference is too big. I can't take it.
"That's enough."
Li Zhenqian pushed his head away. "In the future, I'll also be living in school. Mosen and Ursu will still be living at home. I can save you now, but I can't save you forever." "Ah, you're back?" Qin Shuhua's face was full of surprise. She turned around and shouted, "Lu Saw, you're back. Let's eat."
"Yes," Lu Saw replied with a smile.
"Third young master, can Zhenlin drink fish soup now?"
"No,"
a teenager's voice sounded. Li Zhenlin closed his book and looked towards the kitchen. "Grandma Lu, I'm allergic to fish soup." Chapter 2172. Li Zhenlin was 11 years old, which was a month younger than Li Moyun. However, he looked taller than Li Moyun. Li Moyun was originally quite handsome, but after staying in the old mansion for more than a month, he had become a dwarf. When he saw Li Zhenlin, Li Moyun felt even more wronged. He walked forward and sat beside Li Zhenlin. "Zhenlin, your mom cooks so well. Why don't you get fat?" Li Zhenlin was tall and handsome. He had inherited Li Jinnan's toughness, but he also had Yi Yuyu's gentleness and calmness. When he heard Li Moyun's words, he smiled and said, "Maybe it's because I don't eat whatever people put in my mouth." Li Moyun was speechless. He looked at Li Zhenlin for a long time and sighed.
"Zhenlin, you've become bad."
Li Zhenlin looked at him calmly.
"No, I've always been this bad."
Li Moyun was speechless. Sob, sob, sob. There's really no love in this world. Li Zhenrui and Li Mosen looked at Li Moyun and laughed mercilessly. When Qin Shuhua saw them like that, she smiled and said, "You're laughing so happily. Go wash your hands and eat." With that, she put down the plate in her hand and looked at Li Zhenlin. "Zhenlin, ask your dad to come out for dinner." "Okay, Grandma." Li Zhenlin stood up and quickly went to knock on the door. At that moment, the door was closed. Li Zhenlin knocked twice and shouted, "Dad, Mom, come out for dinner." Soon, a voice came from inside. "Coming." It was Yi Yuyu's voice. When he heard the answer, Li Zhenlin immediately said, "Then I'll leave first." "Okay." After Yi Yuyu replied, she reached behind her in exasperation and asked, "Are you done yet?" "That's right. What's the hurry?" Li Jinnan carefully braided her hair into a beautiful twist. He then reached out and said, "Rubber band." Yi Yuyu handed the rubber band over. After Li Jinnan carefully tied it up, he smiled with satisfaction. He looked at his little wife in the mirror and was happy and blissful. He leaned over and kissed her cheek. "My wife is so beautiful." Yi Yuyu looked proud. "Of course. Young and beautiful. Just like an 18-year-old. These words were half flattery and half truth. Yi Yuyu had taken good care of herself and was usually in a good mood. She was 37 this year. She didn't look much different from when he had first met her.
Humph. Yi Yuyu smirked.
You have a glib tongue. As long as you don't go out and lie to little girls, that's all. Let's go. Mom, Dad, and the kids are all waiting for us. When Li Jinnan and Yi Yuyu walked out, everyone was seated at the table, waiting for the two of them to start eating. The square table at home had long been replaced by a larger round table. In the middle of the marble table was a turntable with a dazzling array of dishes on it. When they came out, the children immediately greeted them. Uncle, Auntie. When Li Jinnan saw Li Zhenqian, he pointed his finger at him and remarked, Good lad. You've grown up. You're even more handsome than your uncle. Chapter 2173. Li Zhenqian coughed softly without changing his expression. Brother-in-law, I bring him along to play games, but I never scold anyone. Li Zhenlin said in disdain, That's right. You led him to a corner and got beaten up by a group of people. In the end, you went back to pick up his head and forced others to cheer you on. You're much worse than me. Li Zhenqian did not deny it and said, Brother-in-law, look, he learned to scold people himself. Isn't it too much to blame me? Li Zhenlin was speechless. All right, it's time to eat, Qin Shuhua said with a smile. She scooped a bowl of soup for Yu Chulin and said, Chu, are you coming to Kingstown with Desu to study? Yu Chulin politely took the bowl and nodded his head. Yes, Grandma. Zhenqian is studying finance, and I'm studying philosophy. Philosophy? Li Xiao was interested. Are you interested in this? Yu Chulin nodded his head and explained politely. Li Xiao and Qin Shuhua had a good impression of him as he addressed them as Grandpa and Grandma. Li Mosen looked at him and quietly put food into Li Zhenyue's bowl. He said, You like prawns. Eat more. Li Zhenyue agreed, but she did not forget to look at Yu Chulin. Her eyes were sparkling and she occasionally chimed in with interest. Li Mosen was a little jealous, but he did not do anything inappropriate. Li Moyun stretched out his arms and started eating. Just as he was eating with a satisfied look on his face, Li Mosen stared straight at him. Li Moyun felt goosebumps and asked, Brother Mosen, are you jealous of my handsomeness? Li Mosen was silent for a moment and said seriously, I'm thinking, can you digest so much meat? I can digest it, Li Zhenyue said. It's just that it accumulates heat and becomes subcutaneous fat, turning into the lumps of fat on his body. As she said that, the children at the dining table laughed. Li Moyun blushed and muttered, I didn't eat a lot. Although he said that, he still put down his chopsticks. When Qin Shuhua saw this, she was unhappy. She smacked him and said, If you want to eat, eat. You're still young. You're chubby and cute. When you grow up, you'll naturally slim down. Yes, that was what Qin Shuhua had always told him. However, there were no signs of him growing taller or thinner. Instead, he was growing more and more horizontally. But when he saw the table full of good dishes, he couldn't help but want to move his thumb. Li Xiao glanced at them and said, Jianlin and Moyun aren't young anymore. Since they're both at home, they should train with me from now on. Ha! Li Jianlin looked up with a look of surprise on his face, followed by a look of sorrow. What? Li Moyun was even more direct. He pulled a long face and said, Grandfather, you can't abuse children. How is he abusing a child? Li Xiao could not help but laugh and said, Your grandfather is kind. Don't you ask your uncle how their grandfather treated them back then? Li Moyun had long heard about it. Unfortunately, by the time he was sensible, his great-grandfather had already passed away and he didn't have the chance to see him in person. When he heard Li Xiao's words, Li Moyun said, What can I do? My grandfather is kinder than his grandfather. It's my blessing. Li Xiao was elated by the compliment and laughed heartily. He said, Come on, eat more. It'll be easier to train after eating. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.